just when you thought it was safe to go onto iTunes. This is Next Level Guy, the only website that makes self-development as fun as going to the movies. It's time to take the red pill and escape the Matrix.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Next Level Guy Show podcast with your host, Ian Dawson-Mackay. Today's guest is Mark Smelly Bell. Mark Bell is the founder of Super Training Gym, Power Magazine, and the inventor of the Sling Shot. He's also a pro powerlifter who has totaled 2,601 at 275 pounds. Mark's mission is to empower those who seek to improve their lives through fitness. He states that regardless of age, gender, or your weight, the only true trait that matters is heart and determination. His products are created to help you achieve your goals inside and outside of the gym. As he says, strength is never a weakness is never a strength. In this interview, we discuss his philosophy on life, intelligence, creativity, business advice, and how you can become the best version of yourself. I've been a big fan of Mark for many years now, and it was superb to have him on as a guest. We cover a lot of non-training topics in this one, and it'll blow you away as Mark is a very deep guy, very intelligent, very articulate, with a lot of advice gems that you can utilise to change your life right now. But before we get into that, a quick word about the affiliates. I've managed to build up some great deals and relationships with some awesome companies. This allows me to obtain special discount codes, deals, and listener exclusives not otherwise available. So please go to www.nextlevelguy.com/affiliates for further information. Currently, out of the affiliates, I'm loving things like the Tribe of Mentors book by Tim Ferriss, Ross Edgley's awesome new book, The World's Fittest Book. Ross is currently swimming around the UK. Yes, literally swimming around the UK, and his book is full of gems, and it's a must read for everybody who wants to get a better life. And on it are going from strength to strength with Alpha Brain and some of their new awesome supplements. So for more information on some of the free trials, special deals, and so on, go to www.nextlevelguy.com/affiliate. But I also have a new deal which may be perfect for you. If you go to improveyourbench.co.uk, which is the UK official distributor for Mark's products, I've been given a very special discount code. So it's available for the next 25 customers. You can get a 10% discount by using the discount code NEXTLEVEL10. Now that's spelt slightly different. So it's NEXTLVL10. That's all one word, and it's NEXTLVL10. And if you use that at the discount section on the checkout, by using this code, not only will you be getting a great deal yourself, but it will also help me get further deals and better offers. Mark offers the amazing Sling Shot, knee sleeves, elbow cuffs, apparel, and so much more that can make you a better guy and a better lifter. I really hope you enjoy this one as much as I did interviewing Mark. Now to the interview with Mark. If you were to give your usual 30-second intro, what would you say? Who are you and why are you well known?
I would say that people have identified me with lifting heavy weights, and I hope that the message that I'm getting across to people, which I try to deliver in some fashion almost every single day, is, I genuinely feel that I was put on this earth to make the world a better place to lift. And what I mean by that is my mission and my goal to help other people find and feel the way that I do about fitness and about strength training. It doesn't always have to be this barbaric thing where you turn on Satan worshiping music and blast it and all this stuff. It can be your own version of getting stronger, and that could mean any number of things. So I want to basically lower the barrier of entry into fitness, lower the barrier of entry into strength training and into general health. And I'd love for people to kind of view me as especially when it's all said and done. I still have a lot of work to do, but I'd love for people to view me as a pioneer, as somebody that always tried to push forward. All the products that I make are geared towards making you feel better while you're training. They're geared towards making the workout easier, more pleasant, rather than making the workout harder. And that's what I feel is ultimately going to be my legacy, especially in conjunction with a film that my brother and I are working on, that I'm producing on nutrition. And I think that'll really shake things up, and that'll really kind of cement my name in the broader picture of things, rather than me just being the guy that squatted 1,000 pounds and benched 800.
No, I mean you're certainly going that way. When I tell people about the podcast, and I mention some other weightlifters who I've interviewed, and it's a kind of maybe a bit of recognition, but everybody knows who you are. They've heard of the Sling Shot, they've heard of your knee sleeve, super training.
Great.
So you're certainly changing weightlifting from the common perceived beliefs that it's just for meatheads, and you're showing how fitness can be for everybody. You're really opening it up with your videos and things like that. But can you tell me a little bit about your upbringing? What did you want to be as a child? Was it always this kind of destiny for you, do you think?
I've made some posts recently, and I think maybe, sometimes when I make posts, it can be a little frustrating because it takes a while. I'm not The Rock. I don't have the celebrity pull of some of these, I am popular on Instagram and stuff like that, but there's some people that are just on a whole nother level, and anything that they say, everybody just attaches to and gets excited. You hear The Rock say the word gratitude, and then 75 other people in that same day are using the word as well. And I don't have that kind of establishment quite yet. And so sometimes I don't think people understand exactly what it is that I'm doing. But I made a post the other day and it said, dream harder than you work. Now that doesn't mean that you don't work hard. What that means is that you never give up on yourself, no matter what. You never, and not even never, because you're going to waver. Like, there's going to be times where it's like, I don't know if this is a good idea. But ultimately, in the long run, you don't give up on yourself to the point where you actually give up. There may be some self-doubt. Like, those things are very natural. There may be times where you're like, holy shit, I don't know if I can handle this. Of course, all those things are going to always creep into your head. But I'm a dreamer, and I have been since the time I was young. Since the time I was a kid, for whatever reason, I always dreamt. And I think a lot of it had to do with my dad was a 9-to-5 worker for IBM, a computer giant in the United States in the through the 80s and through part of the early 90s. He worked for this computer giant, and he worked his ass off. But I think seeing my dad in the suit and tie every day made my brothers and I, or allowed my brothers and I, afforded us the ability to think and dream, because we didn't have to worry about, where our next meal was coming from. There was also a lot of love inside of our household. And so it wasn't like my dad was coming home beating the crap out of my mom every day or anything like that, where I had to worry about all these other things off to the side, which that is the case for some people. So they're thinking, fuck, man, I just want to get out of the house. So I'm going to go be a mechanic, and I'm going to go, just get a job. I can get an apartment. I don't have to live under my parents' thumb anymore, and I can go do whatever I want. I don't have to listen to them fight. I don't have to be abused or see them drink or whatever the case may be in some people's household. I never had any of that. I'm, the byproduct of two amazing parents that were always supportive and always there for me. And I think that's a big reason on why I was a dreamer. And I know that you're from Scotland, so you'll appreciate this. For some reason, I was very awestruck by castles when I was really young. And I'm talking probably 5, 6, 7 years old. We used to drive by this place all the time that was in Poughkeepsie, New York, where I grew up, in this Dutchess County area. And I don't know why it was built this way. I don't know what it was for, but it ultimately became like a racquetball court gym or something like that. I can't even remember, but I think it was for entertainment. I think it was one of those places like medieval type eating restaurants or something like that. And then it was losing money and it turned into a restaurant or something. Anyway, this place was there, and we drove past it often to get to where I lived when I was a kid. And it was this castle. It was this big castle. And I remember telling my dad when I was a kid, I was like, I'm going to live in a castle someday. I want to, I always wanted to like live big. I always wanted to, and I don't live in a castle necessarily, but, I guess I'm still working on it. I do live in a mansion, and it has some castle-like, characteristics. So I'm still working on those things. But yeah, I'm a big believer in dreaming. Also a big believer in, people say don't put the cart before the horse. But I believe that's bullshit. I think you have to put the cart before the horse. You have to be forward thinking, and in your thinking and in your decision making, it's going to be irrational. Not rational. It's going to be irrational. Your thought process is going to be so irrational sometimes. Somebody's going to say, oh my God, well, we can't do that because of this. That's when you know you have a really good idea, and that's when you know you're on the right track. If it's such a good idea that it throws everything else off, then you know, like even something like, I've never had an idea this big, but something like Uber, somebody might be like, you'll never get that off the ground because the taxi services and all the other car services, they'll be right up your ass the second you do that. And the government's not going to allow it. And again, right back to what I said, if it sounds irrational and sounds crazy, it's probably a pretty damn good idea. So put that cart before the horse, dream bigger, dream harder than you work. When you put the cart before the horse, you're going to have to realize that you're going to have to be the son of a bitch that's going to have to lug that thing for a little while until you can get enough momentum and get other people to believe in you, and you can all drag the cart together.
I love the way that you look at life, and it's that things can be achieved. And we had a similar kind of upbringing of like parents who were always there for us, very supportive. And you touched on a few things there that your dad did.
I feel like I have to mention that because, people will say, how do I get started? Or how do I get doing this? How do I get doing that? I don't know other people's life. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend to know what your life may have been like, when your life was so vastly different than mine. So it's easy for me to sit here and say, yeah, think about doing this, and then A, B, and C will unfold. Well, what if your dad fucking died of cancer when you were 10, and then your mom was so depressed she blew her brains out or something? Like, holy shit, man, that's a huge difference in circumstances. Now, you still have to act like an adult. You still have to act like a human being, and you still have to figure things out. But that really does change things, and it's going to take that person's going to have to go through a healing process to be able to recover from that, to be able to, what if they had to, just even more simply put, what if somebody had to take care of themselves from the time they're 13? Well, they didn't have a second to breathe. They didn't have a second to dream, So I think just, throwing everybody under the bus and saying, oh man, these people are slobs or these people are lazy. They all just want to be average. It's a cop-out, and it's not true. A lot of people do want to do better. They don't believe in themselves sometimes because of the upbringing. And furthermore, sometimes they just haven't had the time to themselves to even think for 5 seconds because life is always moving so fast for everybody.
Yeah, and I think that's the main problem with guys nowadays is we listen to these kind of generic podcasts, the generic magazines that say, this is how to change your life in 10 easy steps. And, it depends where you're right. Starting from. It's like, here's a program that's going to change your life. And if you've not got to the same reason that the author has done, then it's pointless. We've all got different starting points. You mentioned you had an awakening that changed your life. Was that the similar kind of thing that is that what you realized, was that you can do these things, that everybody's different and it's just like taking personal responsibility? Or, can you go into a little bit about the awakening?
Yeah. So, when it comes to an awakening, it doesn't have to be like a thing, it doesn't have to be, like this crazy tragic thing happened and then all of a sudden you're like enlightened, it can be done through some education, and it can be done through what is known as personal development. If you Google that and YouTube that, I actually, just a side note, I don't really Google anything anymore because the way that Google's trying to control what you find. And not that YouTube doesn't, but I know that YouTube is owned by Google. But I have found better educational stuff, and for me personally, video is superior than just being able to read something. But I do a lot of searches through YouTube. And if you look up personal development through YouTube, you'll find some really great speakers. And I know some people will think, oh, great, motivational, Tony Robbins, personal development, right? But a lot of these things really can change your life, because I just don't think that we think enough about ourselves from the inside out. I think we maybe in our heads we're like, oh, if I listen to some music, like that'll get me hyped for the gym, right? Like, and you just have these things that you gravitate towards. If I have some caffeine, it's going to wake me up. If I do this, it's going to do that. But you're not really thinking like on a deeper level, such as something like meditation, right? Which somebody might think, oh, that's corny or weird. Well, meditation could be something that if you do some meditating now, by the time you're 30, 40, 50, 70, and so on, maybe that'll pay off to the point where you live a better and a fuller life because you manage stress better because you meditate. You just don't know what these things are going to lead to. So in my opinion, it's really, really valuable that you poke around and you try to educate yourself. When you look at the internet now and you look at something like Instagram, there's some really great things to it, and there's some really bad things to it. One of the great things about the internet is that you can search and you can look for every single thing that you love and that you like. And then from there, things are modeled after what you've looked at previously, and you're thrown more stuff that you like. And that's the reason why when we're watching TV, we get disinterested and we start thumbing through our phone so much. A lot of it has to do with that the phone and the stuff that we're looking at is more personalized towards the things that we're gravitating towards. And when it comes to that kind of stuff, you'll have to be careful that you're not getting trapped into things that you don't really love, into things that you don't really like that much. Like, looking at some girl's butt, you can be like, oh my God, that girl looks great, right? But like, what is that really doing anything else, right? Like, is that, if you're with somebody or you're married, then it's definitely not a great thing to be dabbling in too much, because you have to keep in mind that we end up becoming our very own thoughts, and we start to drift away from our core values and stuff. And you don't have to be a robot, and you don't have to be a lunatic about it, but I think that you kind of catch my drift.
Yeah, I mean,
still there?
Yeah, you've mentioned, that your family there, and you've definitely shown to be like a great father, and you're sort of devoted to your wife. So, what is that? What do you think it makes a good man? Is it like going out and providing for your kids? Is it ignoring like these like sexual images on Instagram and spending time with your kids instead, and making sure they're provided for? What goes into your mind when you think of what makes a good man? Yeah. Is it somebody that was like your father?
Oh, 100%. My dad is my idol. I've posted many times about that in the past. What makes a good man to me is somebody that's going to follow through with the agreements and the arrangements, maybe that they already have, or we all have this self-talk, and following through on your self-talk, I think, is critical. People have heard me in the past mention that cowards talk about things that they'll never do. And I am a big believer in that. And that I don't think there's a man on this planet that can withstand somebody calling them a coward. Right? Like, it's an embarrassing word, and it sounds so harsh, but I've been cowardly myself. I've done that before, right? I've broken values that I've had in the past. Like, we're all guilty. We all do it, but you want to try to follow through as much as you possibly can. And just to touch back upon the awakening thing, so I drifted away from it a little bit. An awakening for me, I had a few of them in my life. My brother passing away was a huge turning point and pivot point in my life, to realize and understand, have a better perspective on drug and alcohol abuse. He's somebody that had mental illness. He was bipolar. And I sometimes would try to apply rational thought to the way that he acted and the things that he did, and that was always a mistake. And it gave me a better understanding of what that situation looks like. It gave me an opportunity to kind of have an awakening in a way of me being able to talk to other people and say, because everybody knows somebody that's addicted to something, right? Pretty much.
Yeah.
And it gave me the opportunity to say, hey man, don't look down on these people. They have legitimate problems. You can't tell them to like just knock it off because their drug addiction or whatever they're involved in. It could be a much deeper thing than just the drugs or just the alcohol. But even if it's not a deeper thing, you still have to figure out, is there some way that you can help them? And so I always advise people to reach out and to try to, just let people know that you're there. And then in terms of like having an individual awakening, my brother passing, getting married, having children, like all these things just make you more aware and mindful. And that's really something I'd like for people to get out of some of the message that I have is like, you don't need to be a robot. You don't need to, never look at another woman again in your life. You don't need to not eat any carbs. You don't need to be this meticulous machine. However, just be mindful, be understanding of what it is that you're doing. When you're drinking, and you're trying to get a certain result from that drinking, do you need to have, 6 glasses of wine, or could you just have 2 or 3 and have a nice desired effect, get into a good zone, and then recover from that and feel great the next day too? So a lot of it's about recovery. A lot of it's about healing from each and everything that we do, whether it's working out or drinking or whatever it is that you like to do, even some of our guilty pleasures, just whether it's food or sex or whatever it is, just, make sure you have a handle on it. Make sure that you're spending more time being in control rather than out of control. And part of the awakening is also just being real with yourself, being a little bit logical, taking a step back. Do I drink too much coffee? Do I have too much pre-workout? Would it be wise for me to cut my pre-workout in half because I have 3 of them a day? Would it be wise for me to not drink so much Monster Energy drink? Would it be wise for me to cut back on the amount of pizza that I have, the amount of beer that I have? Or would it be wise for me to go on some 10-minute walks? Would it be wise for me to get better sleep? Just be more mindful so you can be healthier. And you can't kick ass in life if these other things don't start to get in order, because at some point everyone will worry about their health, and at some point one day when we're all on our deathbed, we'll be concerned about our health and our strength. We won't be strong enough to even lift ourselves up out of the damn bed.
Yeah, I mean, you're very sort of reflective on where you are and how you got there and stuff. So how did you do that? Was it just something that slowly came into your mind, or did you write stuff out? Did you start looking at it, or, did you speak to a therapist? Or, how can somebody else that's going through these kind of issues, how can they start dealing it with themselves? Is it just a bit of reflection time and pull yourself out of everybody, spend more time with your family? What kind of things helped you during this time?
I'd say it's a combination of a couple things. Where I would start, the number one spot that I would start, just because it's not convenient, would be I would start with trying to hang out with people that are above and or better than you. Like it's hard to like say that, right? It's hard to just say, oh, that person's above me, but everybody knows what I'm talking about. Right? The person, now morally and value wise and everything else, I mean, who knows what the person does behind closed doors? We're never going to know everything about everybody. Right? But who are some people that you really admire that are in your circle? It could be somebody who's just extremely positive. They don't have to have a Range Rover or a mansion or anything like that. It could just be somebody where you're like, you know what? I cannot figure this guy out. He's so happy all the time. Try to get around that person more. Try to find a few more people that are like that and see if you can have some coffee with them. See if you can hang out with them for a day. See if you can invite them over your house to have some dinner. These people will be extremely pivotal in your success, because when you hang around success, you start to become that, and you start to see what they do on a daily basis. And sometimes it leaves you scratching your head. You're like, man, I'm nothing like this guy. But guess what will happen? When you hang around them enough, you will start to become more like them. You'll start to, the things that you admire in them, they'll just start to, they'll literally rub off on you, and you'll end up doing a lot of these things. Somebody that comes to mind for me is Stan Efferding, Kelly Starrett, Matt Vincent, Jesse Burdick, Ed Cohn. All these people have been really close friends that when I hang out with them, I'm like, wow, when they have a choice, when Jesse Burdick has a choice to go out and party when we were in Vegas for the Olympia, or just go and grab a steak dinner, he chooses the steak dinner, right? Mm-hmm. When Ed Cohn is faced with somebody asking him to go out to a party, or just wrapping it up and getting to bed early, he wraps it up early. You start to hang around these people. You hang around a Kelly Starrett, and you see the crazy amount of work ethic the guy has. He's got endless amounts of energy, and that'll rub off on you too. And you sit there and go, oh my God, like, how is this person able to handle so much stuff? Well, it's progressive. In powerlifting, we talk about progressive overload, and you want to start to progressively overload your life with things that you need to get done. You want to start to progressively overload over a period of time, work on trying to handle more stuff. You're not going to be able to handle more stuff just right out of the gate, out of nowhere. But over a period of time, you'll be able to. And so that would be number one place, is like hang out with friends that aren't pieces of shit. And then number two is spend time with yourself. That's critical. You have to spend some time with yourself. The way I do it is through music. I try to meditate, but I suck at it. So I've been working on that.
What sort of music would you listen to?
Just, something I've heard, I don't know where I heard it from, but it was actually very helpful, was try to listen to music that is that's old, that is nostalgic to you, rather than trying to search for new music, because that can be a headache in and of itself. Try to find something that you already know, that you love and appreciate, and that's a lot easier. So for me, I like Metallica a lot. I listen to a lot of Metallica. I like Johnny Cash a lot, but it's really just whatever you're into. It could be fast, it could be slow, doesn't really matter. But some of those things will help. And you can just, for this kind of stuff, you can just, turn the music on, and you can go for a good fast-paced walk, and you can think about your day, and you can think about different things that you would like to accomplish. And another part of this kind of self-reflection or personal development process is you're going to want to try to educate yourself. So if you just walk and listen to music, that's not going to be very educational. Podcasts can be very helpful, and they can be of tremendous value. Maybe you feel stressed out. Maybe you have anxiety. So then you listen to somebody that talks about that topic and talks about how to cope with it, how to deal with it. Another quick example would be, I like to go on YouTube, and I listen to all different kinds of speakers. I would like to continue to be a better educator. I'd like to continue to be a better a public figure, public speaker. And the only way you're ever going to be able to figure that out is by communicating better and figuring out different ways of communicating. And so, I'll try to watch or listen to, somebody having a famous speech, or there's all different kinds of things that you can end up doing. But I don't just sit there and listen to it. I actually sit there and take notes. So it's a version of like going to school. But back to what I said about the internet being like it's an open source for you to source anything that you're into. Whereas when you went to school, you were in history, and then you were stuck in math, and you were stuck in English, right? You're stuck in these different classes, and you're pissed about it because you can't break out and listen to or do anything that you want. Now you have the opportunity to do everything you want. And I don't think people are taking advantage of that enough. Instead, they're fucking around on social media. Social media and looking at is more for other people than it is for you. I think that's a good perspective for people to have. Social media is more for other people than it is actually for you. So dive into shit that's for you. Social media will not make you better. You might get better at social media by being on social media because you might get some ideas, but that's going to be minuscule. That's going to be tiny in comparison to what's really out there for you, because if you can unlock your own potential and if you can have better individualism amongst yourself, then you'll be that individual that everybody else wants to be, rather than just following hundreds and hundreds of people.
I mean, this is why I was so keen to speak to you, because I could have started this podcast with how do guys go wrong in the gym? What's the best set range for such and such? But I think this is the problem, is we all get so kind of into our own BS about it, whereas there's so much deeper stuff, and there's so much more to you that I think a lot of kind of proverbial meatheads that we think, So what you always seem to take life very sort of you're always laughing, you're very happy. What other kind of habits do you think men would better from by doing daily? Is there things that you just think guys should be doing 24/7 that would really change their lives?
Yeah, I think that you should always try to have fun. And that's something I really learned from my children, my son Jake and my daughter Quinn. And anybody listening to this that has kids or has some young nieces or nephews would know this too, that when you have young children, all they want to do is like play. It doesn't matter where you are. You might be in line at the bank and they like all of a sudden figure out some weird game, with their shoe or something. Like, what the hell are they doing? And sometimes it's annoying, right? Because they're kind of acting up or being too loud or whatever it might be. But I think that as adults, I think that we need that characteristic. We could use more of that for sure. And I think that would help us relax, and that would help us mitigate stress, and it would help us in a lot of situations for sure. So I think that would be a big part of it. Just almost like you're always looking for fun, like you're kind of in search of it. Like, what would be more fun to do, or for me, like on the podcast, I might even interrupt people a little too much because I want to throw in a joke, without being rude, don't bite your tongue, like throw in your joke, even if it's not that funny, say your piece. And I think that would help a lot of people. Also too, like, think about your, this has been big for me recently. Think about like your facial expressions. Like, you ever just look at somebody and like, man, that guy's pissed. And like, the guy's not doing anything. He's just like, I don't know, looking at his phone, or he's just standing in line at a coffee shop or something. He just looks mad. And be aware of your facial expressions, because again, our thoughts can start to it can make up parts of who and what we are. And I think you should always be a little bit mindful of that. Not that you have to lie to yourself, but if you're sitting there with this frowny face going on, that's probably, some indication of how you feel. You're probably like, I always say you can see when people are like wearing it, quote unquote, wearing it. You can see it. They're just wearing it on their face. They look tense. It's almost like being aware that you're clenching your fist real hard. You might be doing something that doesn't even require you to clench your fist, but there you are, for whatever reason, you're stressed and your fist is all tightened up. So in other words, loosen up, try to relax a little bit, and be mindful of those scowly faces. Like, think about if someone was going to take your picture, like, would you want to be caught, like, making that crazy frowny face, or would you rather like look a little bit more upbeat? Last part of that would be like, you want to be the person that when we all have somebody, and everyone's going to get this image in their head right away. we all have people in our lives that when you see them, like let's say you're picking this person up from the airport, you're driving around and you go to pick them up from the airport. The second that you see that person, you immediately are smiling and sometimes laughing. You're like, oh, there he is. Like he's so funny. He's so happy. Like there, for whatever reason, that person triggers that in you. That person triggers that emotion in you. And I'm not like, so like slapstick, silly, crazy, over the top. I probably don't represent that for every person that knows me well, but that's the kind of thing that you want to have happen when somebody sees you. And you don't want the opposite to happen. You don't want to be like, oh my God, here comes Mark. Like, you don't want people being all stressed out and all flustered because you're there. You want to be like, fuck yeah, like today just got a lot better because this guy's here right now in my presence. And so those are the things to focus on, in my opinion.
So, I mean, you certainly come across as somebody that enjoys life, and that you bring happiness to everybody else, and you're sort of universally loved across the fitness industry. But do you think that's where your creativity has come from? You've created some amazing products, and you've created more content than anybody else in the world, as you've mentioned recently. So how, is that where that creativity comes from? It's that you're having fun, that you're just open to the moment and you're actually experiencing it rather than taking a picture for social media of it.
Yeah, I would say that, again, back to the upbringing. I think the upbringing allowed the creativity to be born, because, like if I had to think about getting a construction job every summer because we didn't have enough money and we didn't have enough this or that, then maybe my life would have been wrapped up in something else. And maybe I would have like dove into something else. But my dad did well with his business. My mom did well raising us. And, my parents got us a weight set when I was really young, and we were kind of off to the races with just, lifting in our garage. And from the time I was 12, I've been thinking about lifting. So it's not really coincidental that I ended up creating a product like the Sling Shot. So I think a lot of that has come from the fact that I guess in some other words, I didn't have any real serious shit to worry about. And so I was able to play and be creative and have fun. I think nowadays, it sometimes gets a little bit harder because I may not have all that personal time to myself, but I rely on other people now, and I push stuff off onto others. If, for example, tomorrow we have Jay Cutler coming in the gym, and I just kind of told some of my staff, I said, you guys think about, what you'd like to get out of having Jay Cutler here. Obviously, whenever we have a guest, we want them to feel welcome and we want them to get something out of it as well. But that pushes that creativity over to them. They might think of something real specific. And the thing to realize when you do start to do this kind of thing is, number one, if you're going to give something to somebody, you got to let them really run with it. And you also need to have two understandings of two outcomes. One is that they could fumble what you did. They could screw it up, right? But that shouldn't be where your mind is at. Your mind should actually be thinking about, I wonder how this is going to play out. I wonder what this is going to look like when I just give them the ball and I just let them run with it. I want to see what this is going to look like. Have the understanding that they can end up doing a better job than you. Also have the understanding that in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 6 months, 8 months, 2 years, they could do a way better job than you because they're doing it all the time. So when we start to, most of the video content that has been created for my YouTube channel, Super Training 06, I mean, there's a few thousand videos on there. Almost every single thing that's ever been posted on there is either just flat out training footage or an idea that I had until recently. Over the last year, we've had Chris Griffin has taken over the YouTube channel, and him and some of the other guys that run the YouTube channel are 100% responsible for what you see now. So that's been a huge help for me. It pulls a lot of stress away from me. And then same thing with every single product that you see that's in the Sling Shot line, from hip circles to knee sleeves. There's not one thing, even all the way through the apparel and everything. There's not really anything that you're going to find that wasn't created by me. Everything is created 100% by me. A lot of it was created for me initially, like the compression cuffs and Sling Shots because I tore my pec. And then, but as we keep moving forward, in order for the company really to grow and expand, it can't always be that way. We're going to have to be more creative. We're going to have to figure out ways of kind of injecting more fun into the company. And also, on a more serious note, like more technology. And for example, we have sleeves coming out that drop next week that they're called X sleeves. And because I was a geared powerlifter wearing powerlifting equipment like squat suits and bench shirts, these knee sleeves are made out of the same material as my squat suit used to be made out of. It's made out of denim, and these knee sleeves are just absolutely crazy. So all these things play into it all. And having a good team, anyone that's listening to this podcast try to tap into some business advice. You want business advice, the greatest thing I can ever tell you is to have a good team. And if you're like, oh my God, I can't afford a team, figure it out, because having a team will be your most valuable asset that you'll have. For now, still a lot of stuff is kicked up from me, but as we keep moving forward, inch by inch, more and more of the team is getting involved with these projects. And a lot of these guys are testing the products with me. They're giving me feedback. Hey, this is a great idea. Hey, this is a shit idea. Hey, what if we did this? Having a sounding board like that ends up being a big piece of the puzzle as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly something that I've noticed is the podcasts where I speak to people like Chad Wesley Smith, Pete Rubish, like Alice Little, these kind of people where we discuss concepts rather than just how many sets should I do this? Should I lift, should I be wearing a bench shirt when I do X? It really kind of opens it up, and they're a lot more helpful to people. And it's like you're mentioning, we're not kind of just focusing on the basics. We're kind of really thinking about things. So has your podcast helped you change the way you looked at fitness, life, and things like that? Is there anybody that you've had on that's really kind of blown you away or has made you change the way you look at life?
The podcast has been amazing, and I think there's some confusion too from people. We had Mark Bell's Powercast, and that went on for years, and then we switched it over to Power Project. We used to have it used to be me, Silent Mike, and Jim McD, and just like with any band or anybody that's together, a lot of times there's some falling out, and there's some different things that go on. But with Silent Mike, it's just time for him to move on, and he wanted to get involved and start to do more of his own thing. And with Jim, it was kind of the same thing. Like, just everything just kind of ran its course. And the podcast, what we found out, the podcast was actually very stressful for him. It started to kind of be a little bit more of a negative thing for me too. I wasn't really enjoying it as much at the beginning. And as you mentioned before this podcast started, you said life's short. Like, it's too short to do shit that you don't want to do, and that's not fun. And I ultimately just said to Jim, hey, I appreciate everything you've done. It was great, but I don't think it makes sense for us to continue, because the only reason why we're really doing it right now feels like because we have advertising. Like, we have advertisements to fulfill. And I said, it just doesn't seem right anymore, and I'd rather just move on and start to do my own thing. So that's when the Power Project, that's how that came to be. And as soon as we started doing that, I started doing a lot more of them. I kind of got reinvigorated, and we don't have advertising on there. I could easily make six figures in advertising, maybe even more, by picking up some friends as sponsors and people I know. It would not be difficult at all, but I choose to not do that because I don't want to clog up the podcast. The podcast is to give you information. The podcast is to be informative and fun, infotainment, I like to call it, to teach people, to have people learn. Like if I'm going to be the people's coach, then I need many different ways of being able to communicate with you.
And
one of the things that, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I was thinking, and do you find just the basic questions nowadays when people say things like, how many sets should I do? What lifts, accessory lifts?
Oh, yeah.
Is that really, is it getting to the point where you're thinking, I've done a video on it, go watch that? You know, there's bigger concepts to understand as men. And
yeah, it depends on who's on the show, you know. And it depends on, you know, if I've had them on before too. You get someone like Chad Wesley Smith on your show, and it can be a mistake to not ask him at least a little bit about programming, since that's his forte, you know, or squat technique, or, you know, how do I get past this sticking point? Like he just has so much. Some of these guys have so much experience with, you know, somebody like Pete Rubish. You know, it makes sense to say, Pete, how the hell have you deadlifted 900 pounds? You're not that heavy of a guy. Like what, you know, what's going on? Like those are valid questions. But when you think about, in particular, and you think about Pete Rubish, what has made Pete Rubish popular? What has made Pete Rubish famous? It's not really the actual weight. It's the way that he lifted. You know, it's not the weight that he lifted, it's the way that he did it. And that's what people got behind. People saw a kid lifting in his basement. I remember the one video where there's like some sort of storm going on outside, and the lights in the basement keep flickering as he's like lifting. And I think ultimately the light goes out and he still does a big deadlift, and it's like almost pitch black in there. And it's just so rugged and so unrefined and stuff. And that's what people love. And a lot of people can identify with that, especially think about if you're a teenage kid or just a young kid and you don't really have a lot of direction in your life. Maybe you don't even really love lifting that much, but watching that person express themselves in that way could give you a lot of confidence, could uplift you a lot. And so I think, you know, when it comes down to some of these specific questions, it really just depends on which, you know, who you have on your show and kind of where they are in their life too. Because sometimes younger guys, they won't have much reflection, and sometimes they won't have anything to say. Sometimes they're literally only a 900-pound deadlifter. That's all they got. That's all they know. They haven't maybe been married. They haven't had kids. They haven't traveled. There's just not enough life experience for certain things to be kicked up to where they would even feel all that comfortable talking about. Like, even for example, if you ask somebody, said, what do you think of our current president? They might be like, I don't know, because they might not even they just might not even think about it, just because they're young and that they don't think much about it. Or I've asked people on the show before if they believe in God, and they're like, I'm not sure. Like that just kind of shows you that they probably haven't really just sat down and thought about it, because that's a lot of younger people. They care about today and what's going to happen within the next 3 minutes.
Yeah, and see, that's the problem nowadays is we're all concerned about likes and, you know, the followers and stuff like that. We've forgotten how to actually enjoy life. You know, there's that picture of the concert and there's 100 people in the shot and they're all got their phones out except for one little old lady who's just sitting there enjoying the concert while everybody else is recording the moment rather than actually experiencing the moment. And do you think that's, I mean, is that what helped you experience life, was lifting heavy weights and feeling part of the moment and feeling the weight on your back? Or is that is that the kind of thing that goes through your mind when you lift? Or do you kind of enjoy the way it makes, it feels you after, like the lifting heavy makes you feel afterwards? Or, can you suggest other ways that maybe people who don't want to lift could experience that kind of feeling that you're talking about?
Yeah. So kind of two things on that. One is, the social media thing can be very dangerous. And I think that people just blow it off. They don't think much about it. But it's killing people. I mean, it really literally is it's hurting people. It's giving people a lot of stress. The stress and damage that we have today is 10 times greater than we've ever experienced before. And it doesn't really make any sense. I mean, I know that you're not in the United States, but here in the United States, I mean, everyone has it pretty good for the most part. We have, food readily available. We got a lot of people have air conditioning in their homes in the summer and heat in the winter and like running water, right? Like we have a lot of these things. We have access to a lot of these things, and people still are, and people have nice cars and they have enough money to do a lot of the things that they want to do. Maybe they don't have all the money that they want, but they have enough money to eat and do the things they want to do. And still people are very unhappy. And I think that social media is a big part of it. And I think it's wise for everybody, especially if you're trying to start a business, wise for everybody to have a shut-off point with their phone, have a shut-off point with the access to the outside world. If you look at a lot of my stuff, most of my posts are done pretty early in the morning. If you look at my Instagram story, for example, it will just die like around 3 or 4 p.m. a lot of times, unless I'm still at the gym. You just won't see anything anymore. It's because I'm learning, and I'm working on, putting my phone away for that second half of the day. I notice I just want to carry it around with me all the time. Sometimes I'm like, I'll go in the hot tub to relax, and sometimes I still bring my phone with me because I might want to play some music or something. But I'm not, I end up, searching Instagram. I end up looking up stuff. I end up thinking of stuff, and the more time that you spend away from your phone, the more productive that you'll be when you have it back in your hand. And so I think that's a really good way of viewing it. I think that, if you sleep 8 hours a day and you probably eat for about 2 hours per day, that's 10 hours of your day that's gone. You probably have about 14 hours or so, 13 hours with shower and some different things. You got other things that are going to kind of take up your time automatically, using the bathroom and everything else. But you got like 13, 14-hour day probably where you can be productive. Can you have your phone for maybe about 2 of those hours, or maybe even like 90 minutes, and be productive on it with emails and everything? I would say, yeah, you can. I would say that would be true for even like the busiest person. So I think that, people try to take it lightly. In talking to somebody recently on our podcast, Jason Harrison, who owns Kuyu, he said when he gets home from work, he takes the phone and just chucks it in a drawer, and that's it. It's done. He's done with it every day. He does not, and that's a good rule. So I was doing something similar before I went to bed. I wouldn't text from my bed, and I put my phone down in the other room to charge and things like that. But that wasn't as effective as what he's talking about. And so I got to kind of up my game. Take some pride in being away from your phone a little bit more. To answer your second part of your question about like feeling the weights and feeling some of that stuff, nothing really compares to heavy weights. However, if you listen to Kyle Kingsbury, or you listen to people from the Onnit Academy, and you listen to Paul Chek. Paul Chek is somebody that people that are listening to this podcast should check out. You might think he's weird, but man, does he have a lot of good concepts and ideas. You can only reach these you can't always reach these heightened feelings of awareness, and you can't always get these certain feelings going unless you're in a particular state. Sometimes they happen naturally just because of the course of the day and just because the way things are going, but almost always they're going to have to be physical. There's going to be things that you'll have to physically try to get yourself to go through. And sometimes some people will utilize psychedelic drugs to try to get themselves to that spot. I think anybody listening to this, not even psychedelic drugs, I would say drugs, period. And I want to kind of also say that drugs can be very dangerous. You got to be careful, but something like marijuana, even some alcohol, a product like Kratom. My brother and I really enjoy Kratom, which can help with some pain relief. It can help with some depression. It can help with some anxiety. Again, use all this stuff with caution. Make sure you're a healthy person before you even think about any of these things. But I think anybody that listens to this show would agree that when you have a drink, it makes you feel different than when you don't have a drink. Think about going to a party and you have 2 drinks versus when you go to a party and don't have any drinks. It just puts you in a different frame of mind. It just puts you puts you in a slightly kind of altered state, different state of well-being. Well, I think that physical activity is also another way to get there. You might be able to get there too through like just exploring, but it would kind of depend on the type of person you would be. But I think that would be physical activity as well. Like if you were on a trail run, or you were just mountaineering, or just even walking through a trail, you can get to some of these spots. And I'm not talking physically; I'm talking more mentally. By doing some of these things, and you can end up with some of these really, really great feelings. If people are listening right now going, what the fuck is he talking about? I'm talking about having a sense of like euphoria, and maybe like just having a different perspective on things. That's why some of the best music of all time, people talk about performance enhancing drugs in sports, but they don't talk about performance enhancing drugs in art. They don't talk about performance enhancing drugs in music. And in music, it's been LSD, it's been marijuana, it's been mushrooms. All those things have led to some of the greatest music that we listen to. I don't ever dabble in any of that kind of stuff, but the reason why I'm mentioning it is because it can get you to a certain state without the exercise. But I do think that exercise is another way to get there. And I do think that the 2 things are probably still a little bit different from each other. But squatting 1,000 pounds, bench pressing 800 pounds, those things are hard to be relatable to anything else. But I would say what I enjoyed about those things, what I loved about those things, was the amount of pressure, and just seeing the amount of weight on the bar, and being able to mentally defeat my own self-doubt. Self-doubt creeps in, and you're like, holy shit. I remember a lot of times not even looking at the weight. I was like, I cannot look at what's on the bar right now, because that is just too freaking wild. I remember in the gym one day, I wanted to do 20 45-pound plates, which is 10 45-pound plates on each side of the bar. And this was for a bench press. And I was in a bench shirt. And I remember that I did it. I think it was, if I can remember correctly, let's say like 925 or 945 or something just absolutely absurd, with like a 50-pound bar or 45-pound bar. I just knew if we got all the thin plates from the gym that we could load that up that way. And again, that was to try to, defeat that mental barrier that's kind of in the way for all of us. But that feeling that I had after doing stuff like that, it wasn't like I get up on the bench press and celebrate or anything like that. But you just felt accomplished. And again, it goes back to what I mentioned quite a bit earlier in the podcast, where I talked about progressive overload. That's what it is. It's accumulation of you getting better. It's a byproduct of you getting better. And the cool thing about getting better all the time, when maybe others aren't as focused in on that, is that you get to lap everybody else. You get to not only just like pass them up, but you get to like be like, hey man, this is my 3rd or 4th time around the track and you only went around twice. It makes you feel really, really fucking good, because you know how hard, you don't have to like rub it in on anybody or anything, but you just know how hard you worked to get there. And the other cool side of that is that you don't even need to say anything, because everybody else knows. Everyone else is like, fuck man, how the hell did he just do that? And you know how you did it. You did it the same way that they're trying to do it, except for you just put that much more into it.
I mean, that's the good thing about this, is I know that if the money wasn't there, if the fame wasn't there, you would still be doing the same thing over and over. You'd still be speaking to the people the same way. You'd still be talking to people, you still have that personality. and you can kind of notice it with different people. Like some of my most well-received podcasts have been where people have talked concepts or ideas, and they've maybe not talked like, oh, you should have asked about X, you should have asked about Y, but just having them sit and talk about something, people have come back and gone, oh, I finally understood that. That makes sense. That helped me change something else in their life. And I think this is the problem is we all want to accumulate information rather than looking at the, what's really going on. And I think this is the thing, is you're opening up a lot of guys who maybe they just want to grant a few pounds out. You're making them actually think about things. So I think that's probably why you're known as a people's coach. So, how do you deal with this kind of, like, how do you deal with working with your brother? How do you deal with working with like your team and that? How, isn't lifting more of a individual sport? How do you transition from being a boss to a coach to a competitor?
Yeah, it's been a great transition. I really enjoy coaching people, and I feel that I have a lot of friends that execute really well with coaching. But I feel that I'm one of the best in the world when it comes to coaching. The reason why I can confidently say that is because it's something that I still do a tremendous amount of. Now, I don't coach like via phone. I don't write programs and that kind of stuff. So some people that are, executing really well on some stuff like that, like Chad Wesley Smith and stuff. But I can watch any person lift. It doesn't matter if they're a power lifter, a weightlifter, CrossFitter, computer programmer, a movie producer. It doesn't matter who it is. I can help anybody with their squat. I can help anybody with their deadlift. I can help anybody with their bench press. Even got an email a while back from Donald Trump Jr. about he said he sucks at his squat. So that was an interesting one. But I feel that I can help anybody get stronger, even just within a few minutes, just of watching their lift. Now, sometimes it depends on the person. You can't always get that 50-pound, PR out of nowhere, but sometimes it works out that way, depending on what some of the issues are. I think something that's made me a good coach was having Louis Simmons as a mentor in terms of coaching. Louis Simmons of Westside Barbell, one of the strongest gyms in the history of strength training. Louis was able to pick apart what you were doing, and he was able to break it down and turn it into other exercises. So he'd watch you squat and he would say, you need glute ham raises. He would watch you squat and say, oh my God, you need a lot of upper back work. You need to do a lot of, bent over rows. You need to do a lot of arching and a lot of pause work with, these particular movements, whatever he deemed, valuable for you or whatever it might be. But he was really good at that. And I picked up a lot of that stuff. And when I coach somebody, I think a lot of times people are kind of shocked that I don't really say anything. I just sit there and watch you lift. And the reason why I don't say anything is because I have to see how your body moves. I have to see how your body works. I can't just say, hey, this is the way that you're going to squat. You're going to have your elbows together like this, and your chest is going to be up. And because that's not always right for every person. What I've learned and what I've seen over the years is I might have people in a row lined up to deadlift at a seminar, and a girl might come up and I might say, oh my God, you need to keep your head down when you deadlift. And then a guy might come up right after her and I might say, oh my God, you need to keep your head up when you deadlift. It's like, how could the information be so different? Well, these two athletes have way different strength levels. These two athletes have way different mobility through their hips, their hamstrings, their upper body. A lot of times we'll see athletes that are mobile and maybe not as strong. A lot of times the stronger athletes have less mobility. So the two things go hand in hand normally. But when somebody doesn't have great mobility and they go to get in position for a deadlift, it's going to look a lot different than somebody who has been doing yoga or gymnastics their whole life. And that person who's doing yoga and gymnastics their whole life, you're going to have to figure out a way, how can they keep tightness? How can they maintain keeping a rigid body when their body is very springy, their body is very loose, their body is going to move in like 3 or 4 different parts rather than trying to move all as one piece in a deadlift. And part of the way we shut some of these things off, it's almost like shutting off a valve that has, that maybe you have, like water coming out of a valve, and you got like 4 or 5 valves, right? Well, when we're trying to lift heavy weight, we only want the water shooting out one direction. We only want it coming out one way. We have to figure out a way to shut off where this other sources of energy are being dispersed, because it's in the wrong way. It's in the wrong. It's a waste of energy. So a movement that is not necessary to what it is they're doing. So, for example, in a deadlift, we'll see, maybe somebody's ass will shoot up first, then they round over, then they're trying to figure out how to pull the weight from there, then their head comes way up, and they just have tons and tons of dysfunction going on. So a way that we shut a lot of these things off is, we remove some weight, because a lot of times when we have heavier weight on, we can't think of what we're doing. All we can think about is trying not to die. And so having less weight on there can really be useful, because then you can actually think and talk yourself through the lift, or the coach can coach you through the lift, which is way, way different than you trying to go 100 miles an hour with 500 pounds. So reducing the weight would be a huge part of it. Getting coached through it, slowing down the tempo would be a big part of it. And the last thing that I've seen that works almost every single time is to just change the person's head positioning. Sometimes it's to do with feet, but a lot of times it's the head. And for the head, we like to try to keep the chin down. And I've actually done this with people before. I'll put like a ball, a baseball, or like a softball underneath their chin. And you got to try to keep that ball underneath your chin the whole time, because your neck is a very powerful component to this whole thing. And if you lose positioning in your neck, a lot of times it's because other things started to unravel as well, like your lower back. And you just end up in this crazy position. I think CrossFitters refer to it as like you end up in this stripper position, because your ass goes way up, your back is all arched, all weird, and it just starts to look kind of funky. And so one way to shut that down and to shut those valves off that are dispersing energy in the wrong ways is simply just kind of tuck that chin down and keep your chin almost tied to your chest. As the weight starts to come off the ground and in a deadlift, as the weight starts to get to like mid shin, then you can kind of throw your head up or throw your head back a little bit. But in the beginning of the lift, you want to keep it all locked in, because if it's not locked in, what that means is that your shoulder blades aren't locked in, your lats aren't tight, your whole body is not in a good, strong, powerful position to try to maintain position throughout the entire range of motion. And that is powerlifting. Powerlifting is your ability to find a position and say, I am staying right here no matter what. I'm not moving. I don't care that it's 1,000 pounds. I don't care it's 500 pounds. You don't care what the weight is. You're not going to let your body become unraveled from those weights. I think CrossFit uses a really good term. They say broken. And what a great example that is. Yeah, someone ends up looking broken when they try a 500-pound deadlift, and they're not prepared for it. So you want your lifts to be unbroken. You want your lifts to be crisp, and you want them to be clean. And so transitioning into some of the coaching stuff, you can see, how much of a tangent I went off on that, because it is something I love to do. And I wish in a lot of ways I had even more time for it, because I really love that one-on-one, just showing somebody how to do something and watching their eyes just light up, and they're like, holy shit, okay, cool. So that's a lot of fun.
And I think that's definitely a great way to look at life, because, we do have too many open faucets when we're working out, or when we're trying to focus on a college paper or a relationship, and we need to look at where, the water's draining from, and just be in that moment. And it's a great way of looking at it. I mean, can you deal with like somebody and say their head's not in it because they're thinking about X? Do you speak to them about outside life? How should a coach approach something like a problem athlete? Is there a way we can shut off the ego and just, be in the moment?
Yeah, I do that often. I in seminars, I'll even say like, if some of you guys want to walk out right now, you can, because I'm not going to talk about lifting weights. I always say that, if I'm going to teach you how to lift, I want to teach you how to live first. And it's not because I'm some superior being by any means, but I just have life experience. I was a professional wrestler for 5 years, played a lot of football. I was a boxer for a while. I've been around, and I've always been somebody that always seeks out the best. When I was boxing, I boxed with Kevin Rooney, who was the guy that trained Mike Tyson. When I was wrestling, I went to the greatest training facility in the country to learn how to wrestle. I was in Ohio Valley Wrestling, which was in Louisville, Kentucky. When I wanted to be the best powerlifter I could be, I went to Louis Simmons. So I've always tried to surround myself and get around the best people. And because of that, I feel that I have a lot of things to share with people, especially people that are younger than me. And I can give them information and have them, learn from some of my mistakes, so they don't end up kind of falling into some of the same pitfalls and making some of the mistakes that I've made. When you have an athlete that maybe isn't really paying attention, maybe it's somebody that you're working with that you want them to lose weight. Maybe it's somebody you're working with that you want them to improve their deadlift and they're always late, or, whatever some of these circumstances are. I think number one, you're going to have to understand their personality. You're going to have to try to get some perspective on why they are the way they are. And that'll help be less stressful for you. I don't think the situation needs to be such a big deal to where you ever belittle the person, or, you may want to poke fun at it a little bit, like the fact that they're late, or the fact that, hey, if they put the same effort into their deadlift as they did to eating pizza, they could be better, right? Like, you might want to poke some fun at it, because sometimes people respond that from things, as long as it's, not in a hateful way. But in general, you're going to want to make sure that they're tuned in. You're going to want to make sure that they're actually listening to what you're saying. And you might have to say it from some different ways. You might have to try to get through to them in multiple ways. So maybe it's not just a conversation in the gym. Maybe it's through text messages. Maybe it's through sending them a YouTube video. Hey, this coach, look at this coach. I said I think that you have tight hips, and I was going over some stuff with you today, and look at this. This is from Kelly Starrett. He works with some of the best athletes in the world, and he found something similar in a lot of his athletes. But I really think that the main thing here that we're talking about is empowering people and encouraging people. So rather than being a coach who sits there and dissects stuff every time, I'm a big proponent of inspiring people and getting them excited. And the only way to do that, the only way I know how to do that, is to kind of share some of my experiences, or just be uplifting people. You don't need to lie. You don't want to blow smoke up people's ass either. But, rather than, maybe they're really struggling with something, and maybe it's just, for whatever reason, it's just not clicking. And rather than saying, man, you really suck at deadlifts, maybe while you're teaching them how to deadlift, maybe you say, you know what? You're such an awesome bench presser. If we can figure out a way to convert some of that over to this deadlift, you're going to be a fantastic power lifter. And I think that we can do it. Here's how, right? It's that's such a different way. And that's why I share with people. I say, inspire, don't instruct, because inspiring somebody could be something that could really last forever. If you give somebody instruction, I can show you how to deadlift. I can show you how to squat. I could sell you a Sling Shot. But if I teach you about life, that's endless. You can use it forever, right? If I teach you about hard work and discipline and dedication, and how, the more that you can put into something, the more that you get out of it. And if you have fun with it rather than walking around pissed off, you'll be able to do it for a longer time. If you gravitate towards the things you're passionate about, you don't ever have to really worry about having energy, because it's not about having energy, because it's a priority, because it's the thing that you love the most. So it's all those little tricks that I like to share, especially with younger athletes, to inspire them and not have it just always be so monotonous with, hey, we need 3 sets of 3, because nothing has changed in strength training. Nothing has changed in fitness. We can still get fit all the same ways that we used to be able to. We could still get strong all the same ways that we used to be able to. 5 sets of 5 has worked for the last 50 years and will continue to work. And 3 sets of 10 has always worked great with bodybuilding. Varying your intensity, which is the amount of weight you put on the bar, with the volume, the amount of overall work that you do in a day. One thing that has changed a little bit, kind of more recently, at least in America, has been frequency, but that's been around forever too. The Russians used it. Many great countries have used the Romanians. That's what I was trying to think of. The Romanians used it. Frequency has been a big reason why you see some of the powerlifting numbers have been broken. And I think it's one of the main reasons why the females are so strong, because they can handle more frequency than even some of the men can. They can lift more often. They can just do the lifts more often. But as you start to break everything down and start to really look around, not much has changed. Everything's the same when it comes to even being healthier. I know there's like the ketogenic diet. I'm a promoter of the ketogenic diet, but like the keto diet's not new. It's been around since like the 30s, and it's lost favor and it's come back. And Dr. Atkins revitalized it in like the mid to late 60s, and it comes and it goes, and we end up back in the same spot that we always end up in, which is the answer lies in the middle. And when it comes to eating and when it comes to overall health, you should be making sure that you're drinking enough water. That's up to you to decide. You should be making sure that you get enough sleep. That's kind of for you to decide. But they say, 7 to 9 hours, somewhere in there, or 8 to 10 hours, depending on who you ask. And when it comes to food, don't overeat. The things that taste really good, stay away from them. Sugar, flour, overprocessed foods are not great for you. So you can eat them, but not in abundance. Fruit, vegetables, meat, stick to those things, eat those things more often. And it's like, we're right back to where we started, 100 years ago, or 150 years ago. The answer always lies in the middle. Some can be great for you. Too much of anything can be bad. It's like ongoing cycle of things that just kind of keep revolving. That's why I tell people to be mindful. Just be mindful. Is it a great idea? Like, maybe I can't talk you out of drinking, but I might be able to say, is it a good idea for you to drink 7 days a week? Is it a good idea for you to be drunk in front of your children all the time? Right? It's like, how can you not agree that could be a problem, right? Okay, well, maybe I'll drink 3 times a week, and maybe when I drink, I won't get drunk. Okay, well, now we're talking about something more logical, right?
Yeah, I mean, because that's what I was going to say, was it's the way you analyze a performer is also a great way that you could analyze a friendship and see where you could fix it. A relationship with a parent, you could take that approach for anybody listening, and they could utilize, improve their friendships, improve the relationship with their family, friends, work colleagues. It's the way, to open it up to actually spend time with a person and actually speak to them on a more open level than probably, have you done that report? Yeah, fine. I think
right.
We've kind of lost that personal touch nowadays. And
I would have to agree. I'd have to agree. And on that same note, I have a friend. His name is Jason Kalipa. He has a bunch of, he's an owner of several CrossFit gyms out here. Actually, not several. He owns like 25 CrossFit gyms. And one thing he has done is he has brought fitness into corporate wellness programs. So some of these big companies, Apple, Facebook, some of these companies, they need exercise for their employees. They need exercise for the people that work there. And part of the reason why we need to go to a gym is because we need to make up weird stuff for us to do. We need artificial exercise because we don't move around that much anymore. We're not like hunting, and we're not digging ditches, or we're not like doing manual labor. And so because of that, we need somebody to come in and somebody to provide fitness for us. A lot of times that's a trainer, or going to a gym, or like my friend Jason, what he does with the corporate wellness thing, which is amazing. he had these two guys at this one facility. They worked right next to each other, and they had a cubicle next to each other. They knew each other's name. He didn't really know anything else about each other. They just knew they were the same age ish. They knew each other's names. I think they knew that each other had children, but they didn't know shit else. They didn't know anything else. They worked next to each other for over a decade. Never said a whole lot to each other. Then when Jason implemented this corporate wellness program where these people would go through rigorous workouts together, rather than like this place that they worked at had a gym, but no one would ever go to it. So now they offered classes that you had to do together, and it would be like doing football practice with somebody or soccer practice with somebody. Rigorous exercise that has to be done a certain way. You don't get to pick and choose. It's going to be tough, and you're doing it because you're seeing the guy next to you do it. So they implement this wellness program, and now these two guys are best friends. They go on fishing trips, camping trips. They meet up with each other's families, and all this camaraderie happens all from these two guys sweating it out in the gym together. And that's another thing is like, when you're going to the gym, it's good to be concentrated. It's good to throw some headphones on and to, be into what you're doing. But if you have to throw headphones on and block out everybody that's in the gym, then you're probably just in the wrong place to begin with. And you should find a place that doesn't get you so pissed off and angry. It's okay to have emotion. It's okay to be mad when you lift. I've done it many times. But you shouldn't be pissed off your whole workout. You shouldn't be, just fuming because there's somebody curling in the squat rack. They should be able to curl wherever they want, They should be able to do what they want. Find a gym that's going to cater to your needs a little bit better. There's so many more options nowadays. And, don't be afraid to tell somebody what you do. Don't be afraid to tell somebody, like, I'll hear this a lot. People will say, man, I wish I had a super training gym. That'd be so cool. And I'm thinking, well, why don't you just build it? I know not everyone has the finances that I do, but I didn't used to have the finances that I do. And I built super training from nothing. I didn't always have money. And so you can figure out, there's a way to do it. And if I'm in the gym and I'm lifting next to you and I got my headphones blaring, you got your headphones blaring, and you're super pissed off and you're doing rack deadlifts and I'm super pissed off and I'm bench pressing, probably never say two words to each other. But how different would it be if when I came to the gym, I had a different attitude. I didn't have headphones on. I saw that you were doing rack deadlifts and I went over to you and said, holy shit, man, do you do some powerlifting? And you'd be like, fuck yeah, I do some powerlifting. I'd be like, hey, well, it'd be great if you could give me some lift offs. I'm over here benching and we could trade information, and who knows, you don't really know. But if you don't talk about it, other people can't read your mind. And just because you're wearing a pair of Chuck Taylors and your socks are up high and you have a Sling Shot wardrobe, not everybody's going to know that you're a power lifter. So you should communicate with people and you should talk to people, because that person that you say something to, that might be somebody that says, hey, it would be sick if we had a powerlifting gym around here. And what if you were the person to say, hey, man, maybe we should build one. Maybe we should think about it. Maybe we should have just some weights in the storage unit and figure it out from there and charge people $60 a month so we can just keep the lights on. I don't know. You figure out just whatever way you have to. That's the way super training started. And I think if people are just, that goes along with being mindful. Keep your fucking eyes open. Keep looking around, be in search, like what's going on, what's happening. And it all goes back to the whole thing of just kind of this realization. Are you on your phone too much? Are you taking too many selfies? Are you snapping too many pictures? Would it help you to do less? The simple question of how does it help? How does it hurt is something that I often go to all the time. How is this helping me, and how does this hurt me? Those are things that you want to. Eating this donut, how does it help? How does it hurt? Well, maybe it helps because you lost 30 pounds and you're at the end of your rope with your diet. You don't want to diet anymore and you feel like having a donut. Well, maybe that is helpful. But if you're only 3 days in, how does it hurt? Well, it's going to throw you out of rhythm and you're not going to ever do the shit that you've been talking about forever. So those are some of the, some of the ways I like to kind of live my day to day.
And is that I'm very constant of your time, but is that what you would advise people listening to this to take from it? Would that be the message, to be more personal, to take 10-minute walks, to be in the moment, to speak to people? Is that the kind of things that they should be taking from this and utilizing in their life more, do you think?
I think it's from, I'm going to screw up how this is actually said, but I think it's a quote from Gandhi, and people can look it up when we hop off of here. But something to the effect of, it's when we lose ourselves in working and helping other people is when we really find ourselves. And I think that's a really outstanding quote. And I think you should put other people not before your needs, because you have to take care of yourself before you can really help other people. But I think that in general, we're not too short or too shy of thinking of ourselves, right? Like, I think most people are a little bit selfish just by design. And so I think that you should make other people a priority. Even just thinking of holding a door for somebody. You're going into a coffee shop and, the door's open, and grab the door for somebody. Somebody's walking into the gym, or somebody's carrying too many things. Can I help? Just little things like that. Or just when you have a niece or a nephew or a friend's kid or your own children asking you a question, maybe it makes sense to just chuck your phone across the room and put it down for a second and try to attend to their needs, because it's when you put your focus in on them that you're going to get the best results that you'll ever have had on yourself. And that could be in just helping people. You look at some of the people on Instagram that are successful. A lot of times they're just offering their help. And I hope that a lot of times, maybe sometimes I come off as like a martyr or something like that, but sometimes I'll take a harsh stance just to try to create a certain image, right? But for the most part, that's all I'm really ever trying to do, is just trying to help people. So I might recommend a particular diet. I might recommend that you eat certain foods, but I'm not ever saying that you have to. I'm saying that if you've ever had trouble before with your diet, this might be a really good option for you. Or if you know somebody else that has had problems with their diet, they've talked about losing weight forever, they've never been able to make it work, then recommend them to me. Recommend them to check out my Instagram or check out my book, The War on Carbs. These are all those things that are, things that I'll just put this information out there in front of people. And so the main thing I'd want for people to get from this whole entire spiel is just to be mindful, be paying attention. In helping other people, you can Sling Shot, you can advance yourself forward so much. So that I feel amazing when I'm able to help people. The other thing is too, last thing is, you can't go diving into helping people too. You have to take your time. People have to trust you before they're even willing to accept help. Or before they're even really ready. They might think they're ready to accept your help, but they're not until they can really trust you. I've helped a lot of great people that I work with nutrition, with training, with different things. And I noticed, I was like, it wasn't until about 4, 5, 6 months went by until we really started to notice progress. And I started to analyze why that happened. And I was like, I know why. It's because they had to trust me. They had to understand me better before they just went in and dove full blast. So don't waste your time right off the bat, but let people know that you're there. You can help. You can advise them. Don't go and spend, a whole weekend writing out a program for somebody that you just met, or writing out a nutrition protocol. Give them quicker, easier advice. stop consuming your calories through beverages. Cut back on your carbohydrates later on in the day, or whatever advice you can give somebody that you feel would help that person. Maybe the person has a sweet tooth, and you say, okay, listen, no carbs after 4 p.m. anymore. None, no ice cream, no nothing. Just eat what you want, but get used to those foods and try not to eat junk and try not to have sugar. Just quicker, easier advice rather than spending so much time investing in others. That way you can spread out your knowledge more and you can get to know more people.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the reasons I wanted to. I mean, I look to you as a sort of role model. You've got the kind of life, the business, the podcast that I would love, but there's this side of you that I don't think enough people get to see. Because we see you as a lifter, but that you have this great outlook on life, and you've mentioned so many great things here that I think so many people need to listen to. I mean, I've still got pages and pages of questions about the book and the war on carbs and all that kind of stuff, and I think we've just barely touched the surface. But I have to say that I think you've changed a lot of people's opinions on power lifters and yourself, because some people will only know you from the lifting. I mean, so how can people find out more about you and get the book and, keep in touch and maybe come down to Super Training and, that sort of thing?
Yeah. So to go to Super Training Gym, all you need to do is contact us on our Instagram. Just slide into our DM. It's Super Training Gym on Instagram, and just let us know when you want to come check it out for a visit. If you're local, if you're somebody that's in this West Sacramento area, the gym is open and free to you to come Saturday and Sunday, anytime between 9 o'clock and 1 o'clock. It's still advised that you just send us a message and just let us know that you're going to come check it out. But anybody who's out of town, if somebody's going to fly, from Scotland or something like that to Super Training, please let us know so we could try to make sure that enough of us are there to accommodate you coming in for a visit. And then people can find me at Mark Smelly Bell on Instagram and on Twitter. And also, obviously check out markbellslingshot.com. We have our Sling Shot products, hip circles, knee sleeves. All the things are there to support you during your workouts. Anybody that's got tennis elbow or tendonitis in the knee or elbow, you're going to want to check out our products because they can really help. They can help you get through, train through and around injuries. I've dealt with many, in my lifetime. That's why I invented the Sling Shot. I tore my pec. Anybody with pec or rotator cuff problems, you're going to want to get a Sling Shot. It's going to improve your form. It's going to allow you to overload. You'll be able to handle more weight for more reps, more sets, which equals more overall volume in your training. You'll be able to handle more weight even when you take the Sling Shot off. It's great for push-ups. We also have a Sling Shot push-up that's devised for people that struggle with push-ups, but can also be used on bench press. The Sling Shot can be used, any of the Sling Shots can be used on bench press, push-ups, or dips. Everything that we have is well thought out. It's things that I've developed over the years. All of our wrist wraps can be applied not only to your wrist, but you can put them on your forearm, your elbow, your knee. It's because they're specifically designed with Velcro that allows you to cinch it down on any body part that hurts. So everything that we've done has been with the lifter in mind, because I was a lifter and I handled a lot of weight in my lifetime, and I know what it's like. I know how pissed off and angry it can make you when you have these bumps and bruises in your training, and nothing can sidetrack you faster than having a stupid shoulder problem or knee pain when you're trying to do your squats. Lastly, we have tons of apparel on the website too for those that want to support. And we got our strong apparel lineup and our power lineup as well. But those that want to get something that's more advanced than a lot of the other knee sleeves and any other knee sleeve that's on the market, I believe we created the greatest knee sleeve of all time, and it's called the X sleeve. and you can check that out at markbellslingshot.com as well. What we did is we took denim and we slapped it on the front of the knee sleeve. I initially tried to make the entire knee sleeve denim, but that technology was too much, and you couldn't get the damn thing over your calves. So with the new design that we have of the X sleeve, you guys will really enjoy it. It has rubber at the top and the bottom so that the sleeve won't slip. What that also does is while you're squatting, typically a knee sleeve will kind of pull apart in some way because you'll have some stretch and some flexibility in some way, but this one doesn't. And so it ends up having quite a bit of stopping power. They do fit tighter, so it's something that people should be aware of when they purchase them. They fit tighter than the strong sleeves, but this is the next evolution in knee sleeves that I'm really excited for the people that are listening to this show to try them out.
I mean, I've been looking forward to this interview for weeks, like since we arranged it, and I think we barely touched the surface. I've probably got about another 4 hours worth of questions to ask you, but
yeah, well, let's do it again sometime.
Yeah, I mean, it's been an absolute pleasure. I mean, I think what you're doing is changing the way things are. You're an inspiration to so many people. So the floor is open to you. Is there anything you'd like to promote? I mean, I could go on and on for hours more, but I know that you're a busy man. So is there anything else you'd like to mention? Any conferences coming up? Anything that you'd like people to check out?
No, just to follow along, and then they'll be aware of everything that's going on, everything we're doing. I know that I mentioned to you earlier that we are looking into another trip to Europe. I think we have like Italy on our list of spots to go, but I'll let everybody know, where we end up. We've been talking about Scotland and some other spots, so I'll make everybody aware of where we're going. I do know that in July I'm going to be in Los Angeles, and I think I'm going to actually be in Malibu for the entire month of July. And I think while I'm there, I might do a seminar or two. I know for sure I'm doing one at Barbell Brigade, and I'm actually doing one with my brother, which is really cool because he and I have never partnered up before to do a seminar. So that'll be really cool. I just don't have the exact date, but I know it's like the first weekend or so in July.
Do you think this interview was anything like you were expecting, or what kind of attracted you to take on this interview request?
Yeah, I think the interview was great. You had different questions for me, and I get a lot of questions. I'll get when I go to like a trade show, people will come up to me and they'll be like, they'll kind of sigh. They'll go, okay, I got a question for you. Like, I got a problem. And I'll be like, oh my God, what is it? And they'll say, my close grip bench press is way off. It's not as much as my regular bench. And I'll just, I can't help but laugh because I'm like, man, you just waited an hour and a half to talk to me. And this is the question, this question is probably it's going to probably work itself out. B, a lot of times people don't even remember what I say because they're super excited to meet me. And C, they could have got help from a local trainer or coach or Googled or YouTubed something and kind of gotten a similar result or answer, right? So I really like that these questions were well thought out because I am trying to, people are constantly talking about success and wanting to earn more money and they're trying to do so many things at once, and I feel that I'm a good person to be able to speak about a lot of that since I was that way, and now I'm working on trying to have a little bit more singular focus, and I think I can help a lot of people. So I think the podcast was really helpful and useful towards a lot of that, and I'm actually excited to be able to direct people to this because I don't get an opportunity to talk this way enough. And even though I have my own podcast, I'm a lot of times featuring and putting the spotlight on other guests. So I don't always have a chance to, and these things don't come out unless people ask. So I appreciate it.
That's it for another week. Thanks for listening. Absorb it, practice it, use it. Until next time, keep trying to hit that next level in your life.